All right, folks. Sorry for the delay getting things set up today. Um, more streaming software drama. Just trying to trying to get it to load this time. I was trying to get it to just recognize the screens that I was trying to share for today. So what I wanted to do today, if anybody, and I already see we have a question. Yeah, actually, let's just jump into the question. Um, well, just a quick. I wanted to do a quick recap of the last stream. So if you attended the last stream, you saw me take on a problem that I ended up struggling with, and after I had solved it, after I ended the stream, um, I solved the problem like 8 or 10 minutes later, which I knew was going to be the case. I was like, I'm going to solve this pretty shortly after I end the stream because that's how it's going to work. And then I reread the problem statement and I realized it was a lot easier than I had initially conceived. So I just want to quickly touch on the process that I went through there. I'm actually glad we we got to get me on camera, kind of like struggling through a problem a little bit because I want to show that that's normal, right? I want to normalize like having to think about a problem and getting like stuck on things. It happens. It's like if you go back and watch that stream, I think what you'll see, hopefully this will come through. Like I'm really scratching my head to get through that solution in the way that I was trying to solve it, and I realized again it was what I was the standard I was holding myself to in that problem was higher than the problem was actually looking for. So if I had read the directions properly the first time, I would have I would have realized that it was an easier solution. Um, but if you look through that stream, you'll see me like scratching my head, but I'm not like, oh no, I can't solve this. And the reason that I know I can solve a problem like that is I have an iterative process of approaching programming, and that is all centered around like having good habits around running my code and testing things and getting Python to do the work for me. And that strategy hasn't let me down yet. So I want you to watch if you haven't seen that stream all the way through. Go back and check that one out and kind of look for that. Kind of look for the way I'm going about it, even though I'm stumbling at times. Look for that kind of methodical process and try to like integrate that into your own programming. Cool. I might give an example of exactly what I did later on if questions die out, but for now we have a question already, so I want to jump right into that. Cool. Okay, so we have the asker has sent a link as well as their code. I'll paste their code there. And why is this not? Oh, that's showing all right. Let me see if I can make this a little more room. I think that's better. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so this is to the question asker, which question does this pertain to? Even nums. Let me just see if I can find it based on the code. Oops, I'm gonna guess it's probably that one. Traversing a list challenge 3, I'm assuming. Did I solve this one? I did. That is the solution. Okay. I will just, well, let's see if I can. Actually, I don't want to lose that. So I will cut this and paste it down here. Try not to let the answer spoil it for me or anyone. Okay, so let's see what this is asking. We'll just do reset input here, see what the vanilla prompt is. Cool, thanks for confirming that. So in the code cell below, use list iteration to accomplish the following. In a list called even nums, append all the even numbers from the original iteration list. Similarly, in a variable called even idx, collect all the values which are associated with even indices from the original iteration list. Okay. All right, cool. So let's look through here. I'm going to start with, oh, cool. We have a little question. Can you walk me through where the error occurs? Yeah, let's see what happens if I run it. Okay, so it says list object is not callable. We get a type error. So I realized this with Premium Prep. I want to do a section on error reading and dealing with errors as they come up. The way I have my terminal here set up, if you know, I'll just model this kind of like in Replit here, right? If we were in Replit, the terminal would be on the right hand side here or something, and this is fine. I mean, it's a preference thing. I don't really have anything against it, but when I get an error, the temptation like this is to like read the whole thing starting at the top and going down to the bottom, which is sensible. I mean, that's a sensible assumption. That's a good assumption to make. The reason I put my terminal at the bottom and often kind of shrink it down pretty small is because usually, like when I'm getting an error, almost always the most useful piece of information is the very last line of the error. So if you can go through and read this whole thing, and the same thing is true in learn. Here, I'll just comment that out for now. So if I copy this into learn, come on, there we go, and I run this, we'll get the same error. All this stuff. And at the bottom, it'll say type error, list object is not callable. So what this means is Python is seeing something that it thinks is a list, and it's seeing the programmer trying to, it's seeing the code written in a way that it's trying to be invoked like a function. So when you put parentheses after something, Python sees that and thinks that it wants to be called like a function. So I often use the word invoked. It's more common terminology is a call to a function. So Python looks at this and sees it as a function call, but it looks at the name of the thing as a list. We have iteration list here, right? So iteration list isn't a function call, it's just a variable. So we can just, oops. Boom. Okay, cool. So we deleted the call syntax, and now we're getting another error. Oh, here, one more thing about reading this initial error. So I put the parentheses back, and I just wanted to show this. If you look at this, it says list object is not callable, and then the next most useful piece of information is like wherever this arrow is pointing. It's pointing at line 9, and it's this for-i and iteration list. So I just go find line 9 in my code, and you can see that this looks like it's being called, but Python thinks it's a list and can't call a list like a function. So Okay, we'll do that. And then we get this next error, which is int object is not iterable. And this is pointing at line 10. So for j in I. And to the question asker, let me know, I mean, as I'm going, there is a bit, I think maybe a 30-second delay. So just, if you have a question, let me know in what it is or what it's in regards to so I can address that. But do feel free to ask follow-up questions. And if this is not making sense, let me know. I will happily slow down or back up or whatever's needed here. Cool. So this says int object is not iterable, and it points at this next for loop. So if I look at this for identifier in I, if I look at what I is the item from the iteration list. And if I look at what the iteration list holds, that's going to be a list of all of the elements from 1 to 1000 in steps of 3. So that tells me that this list is a list of numbers, a list of integers. Therefore, I is an integer. And this loop is written in a way that it's attempting to iterate through an integer. So just real quick, refresher on for loop syntax. We have the for keyword. Then we have, I'm going to put this in curly brackets so we know something else. This will be identifier in, and then some iterable. This will be iterable, and the identifier is being created on this line, like it's coming into existence on this line. The iterable has to already exist, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a variable, but it has to be information that exists. We're not creating it there necessarily. We're putting it there. So whatever is in this final position after the in keyword in the for loop better be able to be iterated through according to Python, right? So our iterable types are strings, tuples, and lists. You can also iterate through a dictionary using the .items, .keys, or .values as well. You can actually iterate through a dictionary without that, but it's a little different. I guess you can. I think you can iterate through a set too. Sets are not really as useful for iterating through though. So usually it's lists or tuples or strings. Okay, so this has to be a list or a tuple or a string if we want to make this correct. So what am I thinking here? Let's think about this, the goal of this. Let's go back to the problem statement and sort of rehash this problem. So in a list called even nums, we want all the even numbers. In a list called even idx, we want all the numbers at the even idx. Okay. So what I'm thinking is we have all the numbers here. I think what I want to do, I'm just going to start over with this. We have all the numbers from the iteration list in I, and I'm actually just going to call this num because that's the number from the list. And one thing we can do, let's just focus on one of these lists at a time, right? So let's just focus on even nums. We'll say if num is even, right? Oops, nummy. So this is going to be if num is even, then we will list, even nums dot append num. So if num, so how do I check if num is even? I can do if num mod 2 modulo 2 equals 0, right? So this gives me, modulo gives me the remainder of num divided by 2 in this case. This is, you could read this as if the remainder of num over 2 is 0, if that equals 0, then we know that num is evenly divisible by 2, and we will even nums dot append the number. So now what we want to do is we want something similar with something like IDX. And there are a few ways to do this. And I'm going to use consecutive ifs here because it's entirely possible that num is even and that its index is also even. If I used an elif, right, then if num was even, then it wouldn't check if the index was also even, right? To be clear, if you're watching this and you're asking yourself, yeah, but like where's index? Index doesn't exist. Index does not exist yet. This is a good pattern for writing code, though, because I know if you think about this, like I know what I want to end up with. Like I know I need to have an index and check if that index is even, and I know I already have code that checks if a number is even. Like I can just duplicate that code. And if that number is even, I will append it to the appropriate list. So like it's almost exactly the same logic, it's just I'm checking a different number, one that doesn't exist yet, and I'm appending it to a different list, right? So to me, this kind of code, like when you realize, oh, I need to do the same thing on this variable that doesn't exist yet, you can just write this code, and then that way you have a clear idea of where you're headed. You don't have to like go make the thing work like it needs to work and then come back and then be like, what was I doing? How do I get this to work again? When I'm at this point, I can just write that code, and I always think in my head, I always think of calling it like rationalizing it, like saying, or justifying it. You write the code and then you justify having written the code with IDX in it that doesn't exist yet by going and making IDX exist. Okay, cool. So let's do just that. So like I said, there's a few ways of doing this. The sort of brute force way, which is there's nothing wrong with, is just make a variable called IDX, and then that's our index. And then at the very end of the loop, we'll say IDX plus equals 0, plus equals 1. And that will add 1 to index every time. I would enumerate. The reason I'm not using enumerate as my first option here is that I noticed in the link you sent me. Well, here, let me pop Chrome to the front here. Just pop it in front. So if you look on the left side of Chrome there's a lesson on the enumerate function below. So this tells me that the material hasn't gotten to enumerate yet. So I want to solve it without enumerate. But yeah, ultimately this problem I would definitely use enumerate otherwise. So we'll look at how to solve it without enumerate first, and then there's two ways that I can think of to solve it without enumerate, and then we'll solve it with enumerate. Cool. Great question, though. Excellent question. So this is one way. We just have a variable and just increment it. I think I was talking... Oh, shoot, now I can't remember if I was talking about this on stream or in a mentoring session. But I was talking, a while ago, I was talking about like while loops and incrementing. When I have something that I'm incrementing in a loop, whether it's a while loop or a for loop, I generally like to do that right away, like first thing in the loop. And for me, it's just an organizational thing. It's just like, I want to keep this all kind of in a place where I can predict that it's going to be. just so I know if I have that behavior, if I have that like create a variable, increment it in the loop behavior, that I know where to find it. Um, you can't always get away with placing it in the top. You have, sometimes you have to place it in various different parts. Sometimes at the end, sometimes somewhere in the middle. But if I can get away with putting that incrementation at the top, that arbitrary incrementation at the top, I'll try. In this case, if I started it at 0 and then incremented it immediately first thing in the loop, then this would be like treating my first index um, as 1, right? And I know I want my first index to be 0, so I'll start it at -1. -1 plus 1 is 0, and that will start me at 0. That'll give me the correct index starting place. Cool. So that's one way, or two variations on that same way, I would see it as. Another way is to do the range of the length. Oops. Let's do this. Len. Okay, there we go. So we'll do for IDX in here, and I'll get rid of IDX here. For index in range da da da. So that gives us index but not num. So all I have to do is justify, or excuse me, or what was the word that I just, yeah, justify having written num, right? Because I have num, but now num doesn't exist because that was what I was getting out of the loop. So I could also do num equals, num equals iteration list, and we'll just index into it at IDX. So num equals iteration list sub IDX. And this will also work the same. Oh, shoot. I have not been printing this. Gosh. Oops. Cool. These are two gigantic lists. Let's just pare this down. We'll do this from 1 to 10 in steps of 3. Maybe 1 to 20 then. Okay, so starting at 1, if I go up 2, 3, 4, I should get 4 is even. 4, 5, 6, 7, 7's not even. 8, 9, 10, 10 is even. 11, 12, 13 is odd. 14, 15, 16 is even. 17, 18, 19 is odd. Okay, good. So I should get 4, 10, 16. And then these are just basically every other item because it's every other index, right? So we should start at 1 and then 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, yep, etc., etc. Cool. So that works. So to the person who asked the question, they also suggested using enumerate here. And that really is the best tool for this job. And we can do for index, comma num, and then we don't have to justify any of this code outside of just this for loop. Run it, and we'll see what we should get the same result. Good. All right, so let's submit it and see if see what this has to say for itself. Reset the input. Then we'll do this. Is this it? Yeah, that should do it. Cool. And just for grins, let's look at my original code. Looks like it's the same thing I did for index and element in an enumerated iteration list. If L mod 2, yeah, it's the same. I called num L for element instead of calling it num, but same code. Good. Let me know if that helped to the question asker. Let me know if you have any other lingering questions. Cool. So I'm not seeing any other questions yet. If anybody has questions, again, feel free to put them in. You won't be interrupting. I may not take it immediately if I'm in the middle of something, but I will, I'll wrap up and take it as soon as I can. I do want to go over the question that I got stuck on last time because it was pretty interesting. Oh yeah, sure thing. Yeah, you are welcome. Um, good. So this problem got me pretty good. Um, I had read this first part, and it's write a function called CSV square CSV. It should take in number data in the CSV format. So CSV is a comma separated value string, right? And this is simulating dealing with a CSV file. It will square the numbers in the CSV and then return the squared numbers in the original CSV format. So what I didn't read was this part, this notes. The notes says the CSV may also contain new line characters which should be preserved. Any float object should be rounded to decimal places. What this doesn't say it explicitly, but it's close enough to being implicit that new line characters also count as a separator in the CSV format. So CSV stands for comma separated values, and in this case, new lines can also act as a value separator as well. So if we look at these examples, especially the second example, right? The second example we notice some integers, we have a float, we have a new line that acts as a separator, we have some more integers and a float, right? And if we look, the interesting part to me is the where the 13.0, this first float gets squared, and then we have the new line, so that has to be preserved, and then the 7 gets squared, that integer gets squared there. So these are, act as independent numbers, and the new line acts as a separator, and we want to preserve that new line in the output as well, right? So the approach that I took about on this was like, okay, so what I did initially is I read the first part of the problem statement, and I skipped the notes, and then I looked directly at the question here, and I saw that there was a new line, and I sort of took this to mean like, yeah, so anything that's not a number or a digit character or a period acts as a separator rather than only commas and new lines, right? So I figured it was gonna maybe like throw in spaces or other characters. So I built my code in a way that it would separate on every character that wasn't a new line character. And because of this, I couldn't use something easy like split. I wanted to build it in a way that didn't use split. So what I did is I enumerated the the initial string, the CSV string. I got the index and the character, and I went through every single character. And basically, the logic was if I encountered something that wasn't a digit or a period, then I would consider that character a separator character, and I would say, okay, if that's a separator character, what I need to do is go back in the list to and slice the list back to the index of the prior separator character, right? So I had to track the index of the prior separator character, which means, what do I do on the very first number when there is no prior character, right? So I had to have slightly different logic to handle the very first number, slightly different logic to handle all the numbers in the middle, and slightly different logic to handle the number at the end when I couldn't detect a separator character, because instead of a separator character, I just had the ending of the string, right? So I had to have these. My code ended up diverging into these three different paths that were all just slightly different, and ultimately, a small oversight that I made led to what it was is I didn't have this line 20. If I comment that out, I'll get the error that I was really stuck on at the end of the previous one. So if we look at this assertion error, and then I get this, just this long output, and if I look, this, it scrolls really far here. So what I did, and the way that I solved this was, I know an assertion error will usually it'll usually show you the output that you got as well as the output that it was expecting. So I was like, okay, let's look at the output that I got and the output that it was expecting, just paste it into the terminal, side by side it, and see if we can see any difference. So it's saying this was not equal to this. Oops. And so the idea here, I'm going to just shrink my text just a little bit. The idea here was that I was like, okay, I'm just going to go line by line and just see 5, 6, period, 2, and then this is just sort of filler, 2, 4, da, da, and I'm just going to look at every single one. Before I could get through the whole thing, I noticed right away the ending was different, right? And I thought, okay, so it looks like whatever the ending character was, and I was getting this with the tests that I had as well, and I didn't notice it. It was subtle enough that I just didn't notice it. So let me just quickly model this. Recreate this solution. I hope you all are enjoying me going over my most embarrassing blooper reels of 2020 streams. Okay. Oops. So paste that in. Okay. So I had some other tests that were essentially, when I ran them again, I realized this last number was being duplicated. And the way I was adjusting the range and the index, I had to just arbitrarily add the current character back on when I appended to the CSV out list that I would ultimately join, and that would become my output. So the way I was creating this, I was appending whatever the current character was, which means at the very end, the current character was the last character. So what I had to do is say if is last index, which was a variable that just checks if we're at the final index. It checks if the index in the enumerate is equal to the length of the CSV in minus 1. And you have to make this a minus 1 adjustment because the index is 0 based, it starts at 0 base, and the length is actually uses a 1 based counting, right? It reflects the length as if you were counting the first element as 1 rather than 0. So you have to, when you're comparing the index to the length, you have to subtract 1 from the length. So that's why that's there. So basically, this tells me if I'm at the final iteration of the loop. I just save this condition is evaluated first thing in the loop every time, and it returns true or false and is saved in this variable. So when that's true, it says if is last index is true, then we idx plus equals 1, and so I needed to adjust the index in a way as well as nullify this ch character. I just assigned it to an empty string, and in this case, I didn't need to add that back in. So that was the whole scenario, and it just got that one little thing. But this is why, and I hope this came through in the stream. I don't know, I don't know how I seemed, but the way that I was feeling about this, honestly, I was a little embarrassed, but I'm like, you know what? This is good. I do want to normalize this kind of thing. And it's good that you all know that, you'll always have problems that will throw you for a loop, even if they're easier problems. The skill that you develop in the end is to be so methodical that even if you're getting thrown for a loop, you don't need to worry about whether or not you're going to solve the problem. Because to me, I know if I just hang on and stick to that methodical approach, I'm always going to get it. And in this case, that methodical approach was just like, okay, read the error, copy in the error, look at it side by side, and pretty quickly the length of the two didn't match up, and I was like, oh well, that'll do it if I'm duplicating that last character. And then I just quickly examined and made sure the rest of it was okay, and once I nullified that character add to the very end, then it was good to go. Sweet. All right. Let's resubmit that like that. Let's actually look at their solution though, because after I solved it, I like came back and scrolled back up and then saw this immediately, and I was like, oh, what they mean is only commas and new lines can act as separators. So they actually take a kind of an interesting way of solving this. And it's much simpler than my code. It's one function instead of two, and it's just way simpler. Cool. And I'll look at that in a second. I'm going to just delete all these comments out just to kind of slim it down a little bit. Okay. So their solution get all these comments. Cool. Much simpler. So pretty straightforward. For line in CSV data.split on new line. So this is saying split on new line characters, and we do this squared list, and then for this gives us essentially every line in the CSV, and then for num in line, which is our each string that returns. Dot split. Wait, that needs to be, can't call split on a string. I wonder if this is going to work. I wonder. Let's see. Let's see about this. Real quick here. Okay. We'll see. Oh. That is pretty wild. Oh, gosh. I'm just being, I don't know what's wrong with me today. Yeah, this is just me being super dyslexic. So yeah, line is a string. We split the string on commas. That gives us a list of values without the commas. And then we just see if there's a period in the number. So for number in the line dot split. If there's a period in the number, then n equals float num, else n equals int num, and then we do our n squared, etc. Rest of the whole thing. So this is much more straightforward, knowing that all we need to split on is new lines and commas. My code will work for a separator that is any character, including new lines, commas, and anything that's not a digit, basically, or a period. So I basically solved a different problem that still got to a working result. Cool. But I had a lot of fun doing it. It was a good challenge to do it in this way, and even though I made it much harder than it actually needed to be. Yeah, it was still fun to solve it in this kind of funky way. All right. So let's do. Thinking we can kind of pick up from lists. We've been kind of slowly picking our way through this bit on lists here. Oops, and sorry, I will blow that text back up. That'll make it easier. List membership. All right, let's just do these. I don't want to spend a whole long time on this because I think we've gone over list membership fairly well. This list membership just allows you to check if some element is a member of a collection. So you say, we'll do this first one. If you have a list whose definition was your list equals list range 10 plus list range 50, 65, 5, what would you express? What would the expression 65 in your list return? False. The reason is we have this range of 10. We have a list of range of 10 that's going to give us everything from 0 through 9. And we're going to concatenate that with a list of 50, 55, 60. But the upper bound is never included in the list. So if we ask if 65 is in the list, it won't be, because 65 is the ending of the range that we make the second list out of. So it won't be excluded, or it won't be included. If we did want it included, we have to do 66 there. Oops. Cool. what would be printed to the console after the following expression? So first list equals list range negative 100 to 1 in steps of 10. Second list, what are we doing? 11 in join list. Okay. So the second list is a list of range 0 through 101 in steps of 10. And then the final list is first list plus second list plus a list with a single element of 11, and then this says print 11 in joined list. This is going to be true because we can see we're concatenating 11 right in at the very end. I think I forgot to mention a check for membership is a valid condition, right? It's a valid condition because it's an expression that evaluates to true or false. So a check for membership expresses a Boolean value, so that's a good thing to know. Okay, use the animals list and in keyword to return true Boolean, to return a true Boolean assigned to the variable. Similarly, use the in keyword to return false. So we'll say cat and animals, and we'll do mouse and animals. Cool. I wonder if I could just get away with doing this, showing you how to hack learn. Probably maybe. Okay, that also works. That's funny. Okay. Well, don't do it the hackish way. Do it the right way. Cool. List slicing. We've talked about slicing a bit. So by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to access a portion or quote-unquote a slice of a list. And we can save the accessed slice to a sublist. And use the optional step parameter in list slicing. Cool. So I think, again, we can kind of just skip through here. So for those who might want just a quick refresher, just a very quick refresher on list slicing. We have a list. I'll just do a, list equals this. And let's say I want to get this 753. I can print list sub, and we'll do a slice from the index of 7 up through the index of 3 plus 1. So we want to start our slice at the index of 7, which is 7's index is 0, 1, so that'll be 1. That'll be where we want to start it. And then we want to stop it at 2, 3. So if I stop it at 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, it's going to go up to here and stop short of that, so it's actually just going to be 7, 5. So I have to do plus 1. Obviously 3 plus 1 is 4. So we'll just do 4. Why am I still getting output from This, don't need that. 753, cool. All right. Oh, quick note on this. If I want to start at the beginning, I just leave the start blank and it'll go to where I tell it to end. If I want to start somewhere else and go to the end, I just leave the end blank. You may notice that there is a third section, right? There's these two colons in here that make three sections. The first section is an integer to represent the start. The second is an integer to represent the stop. If they're blank, it'll assume the beginning and the end respectively. The third is the step. So if I, for example, if I want to do every other number, I can do steps of 2. Four, 5, 8, right? So that'll give me the first one. It'll skip the next one. Give me the third one. It'll skip the next one. Give me the fifth one, etc. Or yeah, you know what I'm saying. Cool. The step can also be a negative number. So if I do -1, instead of going from the left to the right, I'm going to go from the right to left. So colon -1 is a way of just de facto reversing something. You can do list sub colon -1, and that will reverse something. Our list is 47538, and our reverse list is 83574. Good. All right, so given the list defined as my list equals list range 50 to 100, what would the correct way, what would be the correct way to slice the first 10 numbers? So we can look at my list colon -1. And by the way, you actually, if you don't intend to use the step, you don't need 2 colons. I always put them both in, whether or not I'm using the step, but usually you'll see people just use 1 colon. If you use 1 colon, then it's just start and stop. So here this is saying to stop at -10. This is saying to stop at -9, which will be indexes 0 through 9, which is 9 indexes. Or wait, am I? No. Oh yeah, no, that actually is right. Oh no, I'm wrong about this. Gosh. 0 through 9 will be 9 numbers. 0 through 10 will be the first 10 numbers, and it stops short of 10, so it goes to index 9, but since you have 0, you recuperate that 10th one. A brainy day today. All right. Whoop. So use slicing to create a new list called middle 3, whose contents are the middle 3 numbers of my list. So slicing can be done using positive or negative indices. The middle 3 of my list. All right, so I think I want to bring this into my terminal so I can test it. So my list middle 3 equals, oh wait, I already solved that one. Cool. We'll just pretend like I didn't solve that. So we'll say my list equals, excuse me, middle 3. Middle 3 equals my list. And then we can do the middle three of this collection is going to include negative 100 to positive 100. So it'll be negative 1, 0, and 1. So this will be index 100 through 102. I think that'll be it. Oops, let's print middle 3 just to make sure. We should see negative 1, 0, and 1. See, we see 0 here, right? So I need to adjust this. We should do 99. Back that up one. Good. That'll work. Obviously, that's what I have there. Cool. Use slicing to create a list containing 3 sublists according to the following specifications. The first 5 elements of the original list. Oops, I already did this one too. Try to leave this free of spoilers. Pop that at the bottom there. And let's do reset input. Good. The first 5 elements of the original list, the last 5 elements of the original list, and the middle 5 elements of the original list. Okay. So the first 5 are going to be my list. Well, we'll get to that in a second. Let's copy these 3, pop them there. And I want to make this my sublist. Note the resulting sublist should be assigned to a variable my sublists in order that they are described above. Okay, cool. So presumably my sublist itself should be a list. So the first 5 are going to be, from the beginning through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 will be the first 5. So let's just see what that gives us. Oh, of course. One, 2, 3, 4. Nope, not enough. I'm going to do 5. Cool. The middle 5 will be, we'll start at the len of my list over 2, so that'll be the halfway point, minus 2. Let's just try that. And it should start at let's see. Slices must be indices, right. Let me make an int out of this real quick. We'll do sublist 2. And let me actually, I'll do the end of this. I think I'm going to have to adjust this, but we'll just try plus 2 here. I think it's going to be a little off, but we'll just see, and we'll see which way I need to adjust it. So I want negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, which I have. I'm starting at the right place. I just need to go up 1 more. So we'll do plus 3. Good. That should be the middle. And then this last one will be my list sub colon colon, and we'll start from we will start from negative 5. Let's try that. Oops. We'll do this 3. And that'll give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, good. So starting at negative 5 means from the right, count 5 back, and then go forward until the end, right? So this doesn't change the direction because we didn't change the step direction. It just says start at the negative 5th index, which is from the right to the left. Count in 5, and then it goes to the end of the list. Cool. So let's see. Yeah, let's see if this is going to do it. Hmm? Oh, interesting. Oh, that's why. So this 2, we'll call this 3. I put them in the wrong order. And what I want to do is this. So it's first 5, last 5, then middle 5. Good. That does it. All right. Let's see what I did before. So here's my previous code. I'm doing this thing with list mid, where I'm taking the middle of the list. The first one is going to be the first 5, that's the same. Last 5, that's the same. And then the middle 5 is going to be, this is the same logic, except I'm just breaking out the middle of the list into its own variable. And I should probably just move that down there so it's clear. So this says the middle of the list is equal to an integer of the length of my list over 2. And then we just go list mid minus 2, 2 list mid plus 3, and that'll give us the middle 5. Cool. Good to go. It's kind of an interesting solution. I'm going to save it and set it aside. Do that. All right. So write a function called every third from list. This function will take a list as an argument. The function should use slicing to return a new list containing every third element of the list passed in. So this one looks like it has a list of make, model, and year for cars. So Ford Taurus 1997, Chevy Malibu 2003, Amish Buggy 1857. And then this is just going to contain the years. So that's a nice pattern, easy pattern. All right, so let's do every third element from list. Let's actually just delete this since I have that somewhere else now. So I'll say print this, and we'll do some list. is some list there, and we'll do some list, pass that in, and this is our reasonable expectation. There we go. Okay. Def every third from list, takes in list, return list sub : 3, and we'll just see. Maybe we need to adjust that, but I think we're good. Okay, so this is going to give us Ford, Chevy, and Amish, right? So this will give us all the makes. So we actually want to start at 0, 1, 2. So instead of starting at 0 or 1, we want to start at 2, and we'll start at 2, go in steps of 3, and that should do it. There we go. So it looks like this. Perfect. All right, nested lists. So the goals here are to create a nested list and access elements, or access an element from within a nested list. Not too much to know about nested lists. It's just, that you're going to have list equals a list of, like, let's do 5, 2, 2. So we have elements in this list, nothing shocking going on here, but we can also have another list in the list. And let's do 55, 25, 35. Cool. Cool. So let's say I want to access this 25. I can say print list sub. Let's say I want to access this, well, let's do something like this. Make them all unique. I want to access this too, not too much going on here. We'll do index 0, 1, pretty easy. Probably don't even need to run that. So if I want to access this list here, let's add in a few more. I'll do 0, 1, 2, 3. So the nested list is the third element in my in the parent list. So we'll do list sub 3. So now we need to index into this nested list and get the middle value with it, which is in the nested list index 1. So how can we access that? The funny thing is, when you index into a list, wherever you're doing that indexing, it evaluates into whatever, it evaluates as whatever the element in that index is. In this case, it's a list, so I can just index into it again. So that'll be 25. Perfect. So we can do list sub 3 sub 1. Looks a little funky, but it's totally fine. Well, I'm going to skip these. Nested lists, I don't know, these nested lists are not something that you deal with often. They're not really a good way to structure data. You may have to deal with them. You will see them. You definitely will see them. Yeah, cool. All right. So given the list, my list, this is a test of will. What would be the correct way to access of? Okay, so that'll be 1, 2, 3. So, or 0, 1, 2, excuse me. And then 0, 1. So 2, 1, 0, 1. So 2, 1, 1. It looks like it's going to be this one. Cool. So how did I determine that? I think it's probably obvious, but also know how this works, so it's probably going to be more obvious to me. If you don't know how this works, then it'll be less obvious. So, if we look, this outer list has two nested lists inside of it, right? It has this element, this third element here is a nested list, and then this final one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 elements in my list, right? So basically I'm just looking at this of, I just have to get into here, so I'll go the first element, so 0, 1, 2 to this list that contains the of, and then I look at this list, index 0 is A, index 1 is the list that contains of, and I'll look inside there, index 0 is test, and index 1 is of, so that'll be 2, 1, and then 1 again. Cool. Hopefully that's clear. Tell if something is a nested list. Given the list LST, and LST is a list of 1, 2 lists. Each list is a list of a range. We've got 10, 60, 10 in both cases. Which of the following would return true? 60 in list sub 0? No. 30 not in list sub 2. That would actually not return true or false. That would be an error. List sub 2 is index out of range for list. This list has one element, which is index 0, and another element, which is index 1. So list sub 2 is an error. 20 in list sub 1, sub 0, so list sub 1, sub 0 is going to be the first element in that collection. So that would be an integer. You can't do a check for membership there. So I think that would be another error as well. I don't know that one off the top of my head, but I believe that would be an error. 20 not in list sub 0 sub 1. List sub... Oh. Gosh, I think I got those totally backwards. I'm sorry. 20 in list sub 1. I'm sorry. So list sub 1 is this second list, which itself contains a list of a range. So list sub 1 contains a single element, which is a list. So that's list sub 0, and that's that range. So actually it would be this one. I totally read those two backwards. That's super weird. Okay. Cool. Slice a nested list. So final list equals this list is deeply nested. How would you slice these how would you slice the sublist deeply nested? Okay, so that'll be list sub 0, 1, 2. We have to find something that starts with 2. There's only one option. Oh, no, two options. Start with 2. So that'll be list sub 2, sub 0, sub 0, sub colon, oops, sub 1 colon. So 2001 colon. Okay, that'll be that one. Cool. All right. Does that, did I miss one? It's saying I missed one. Yeah, I missed this one. First one. Okay, create a list named toNestedList whose first inner list is a global guess and canter. Create a list named toNestedList whose first inner list is, oops, and we'll do comma. I think I want to do this. There we go. There we go. And second empty list are our great mathematicians. Let's try that. So if I were going to make it nested lists like this, I'd break them onto different lines just to make it a little more readable. Cool. That gets me through that. Awesome. Manipulating list overview. Cool. I'm thinking this is a good place to stop. I'm not getting any questions in the thread. So I think we can just wrap up here. It's a good place to leave off, and next time we can start in on manipulating lists if we don't have any other questions. If you do have other questions, feel free to DM me at any point, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. I know some of you may have already DM'd me and are waiting on a reply. I am working on it. I will get back to you as soon as possible. Cool. Also, if you have feedback on how the streams are going, especially I know we've had some problems with the fidelity being weird. I think we've got that sorted out for now. I know it's also low resolution. I'll be experimenting with trying to make that higher resolution, so sorry about that if it's a little grainy. But I think just the stopgap solution for now is just use large font and just deal with it that way. But yeah, I'm interested in any feedback. If you loved it, if you hated it, do feel free to like, comment, and subscribe accordingly in the videos and YouTube. And that support would be greatly appreciated. So, yeah, we'll wrap it up there, and y'all have a great rest of your evening. Bye-bye.